time, everybody, to sit down and talk about the things that Yugioh Vrains did wrong in the form of a top 5 video. It's been a few weeks and we've all had our chance to marinate on our opinions on Yugioh Vrains, and I've been sitting here taking it all in. I totally didn't just forget to do this video because of New York Comic Con. But yeah, we're here and we're just going to sit down and talk about the things that I think went wrong here, because there's some big problems with this show. And don't get me wrong, there's actually not a ton of them. It's just that the ones that are there never went away and kind of just kept getting worse. So, yeah, let's just sit down, we'll talk about them. If these problems didn't affect you, that is totally fine. And don't worry, next week we'll come back and talk about the positive things about Yugioh Vrains, so we can end this series off on a high note. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 5. So, at first I didn't think I would actually put this on the list, but the more I thought about it and the more I tried thinking about what else irked me in the show, I just kept coming back to this. Number 5 is the way they treated Go Onizuka. So, yeah, in Season 1, Go, well, for starters, he was introduced for us very early. He was introduced with Aoi, and we were all kind of wondering, would he be the best friend? Would he be kind of like a big brother mentor type role? And what we sort of got was this likable, not particularly super deep, kind of sports metaphor, very big, very masculine character, who, all things set aside, had a decent Season 1 arc, and was likable enough, and had a pretty good fan base. Like, a lot of people actually really liked Go and the Goki deck. So going into Season 2, what does Konami decide to bring us? Well, Go is now an asshole who threw his entire life away to join up with the bad guys so they can catch Yuusaku, all because he just wants to duel him again. Does this seem like a problem to you? Because it was, if you were watching this, just out of nowhere, Go is a bad guy, and he is just acting completely against everything that was established for him in Season 1, with very flimsy reasons. And it just kept getting worse and worse, because then he captured the Earth Ignis, and then he watched without caring as the Earth Ignis was murdered, and then they fused him with the Earth Ignis for a really bad skinny him, only to then just be beaten by Yuusaku. It was so bad. And it was one of those things, it was so unnecessary and unneeded. Like, a lot of people were really excited to see what they do with Go in Season 2, and when we got this, we just felt betrayed. And look, I actually think you could have made this work. I think there could have been something really interesting about a character going rogue, about toxic masculinity and a sports metaphor, and how that could really corrupt someone. I think you could really do something with that, but you need to give it time. You need to develop it. You need to be on Go's journey as he just spirals into chaos, and then be with him as he tries to bring himself back up, because in Season 3, he's just back to normal. He's just like, I want to better myself. I'll fix things. I can totally do that. And then he's just gone again. Now, I liked the way they got rid of him in Season 3. I thought it was good, but it doesn't change the fact that all of Go's character development happened off screen, and that sucks. I want to be on journeys with these characters. I want to see what they're going through and what adventures they're going to go on and how things affect them. I don't want them to tell me about it after the fact, because it is cheap, it is stupid, and, well, it turns you into one of the most hated characters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Number 4. So after the huge disappointment that was the Performer Pals, I think a lot of people were really hoping the Cybers would be really cool. Yeah, Deco Talker, Firewall Dragon, they all just looked like just everything we've gotten just with a tech theme, but they seem to feel more focused and have a much more consistent design aesthetic, and also their effects were seeming like they could be really interesting. Unfortunately, none of these things really remained. The Cybers, once again, like the Performer Pals, just felt like pack filler. There were just a million of them, and they were just crowding up structure decks and booster sets, and so many of them were just random, and we're just like, why would you play them? It just felt like Konami wanted to really promote this type and just like really stick it in everything, and well, it just didn't work. So many of them were just bland and uninteresting, and the whole Firewall Dragon fiasco, I think, just created a whole ton of problems. And it sucked because when so many other decks were being played, pretty much like they're being played in real life, and so many of these decks were tier 1, when you see that the main character just has this really uninteresting strategy and just kind of gets random boss monsters that are perfect for the situation, and none of them really look like anything that interesting, it just makes it feel bland and boring, and it's just really hard to get into anything Yuusaku does during a duel. I really wanted to like the Cyburst, but the whole Firewall Dragon fiasco, I think, really ruined everything, because your whole mascot for what this whole Link era was supposed to be about had to be distanced because he created the biggest PR nightmare in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. It was just a complete disaster, and I hope they learn from their mistake. It's only would be the 3rd time in a row they screw up. Number 3, we're now into the big things that really irked a lot of people. First and foremost is the plot and how it's paced. So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains has a lot going on to it, and there's a lot of interesting themes that the show wants to get across. Shut up, train! The show is trying really hard to tell this story about victims and survivors and how hard it can be to move on in your life and what it takes to get closure and how revenge can hurt you and all these interesting things, and it never gets to be really explored because the show just wants to go from plot A to point B to point C and never really wants to explore any of its themes because it's just going to cram more plot in your way. Like episode 1 is, here's Yuusaku, he's this weird, strange guy who's clearly been through something. Oh wait, he's got to go capture Ai now, and he's got to jump into the Vrains and deal with the Knights of Hanoi, and oh, here's Go. Is he interesting? I don't know, because we got to get him out of the way so Aoi can show up. Oh, who's she? She seems interesting. Oh no, wait, Knights of Hanoi now. Here's our rival, Revolver. Oh boy, I hope we can do a lot with him. Oh no, here's Ghost Girl, and it just goes on and on and on, and we never really take 5 seconds to just ask simple questions like, what does this person think? How do they feel? When you craft a story, when you write characters, you need to take moments to get into their head and really see how they think. And this show didn't want to do that. It just wanted to spend all its time just getting plot out of the way and introducing just thing after thing after thing, and I hate that style of storytelling. I hate stories that are so afraid to just take time to relax because they're worried about that you'll walk away if you're not just being thrown shit in your face all the time. And this show suffered from it so badly. I never really felt like I got into a lot of these characters as much as I had in other Yu-Gi-Ohs. And all that revolves around it's... Number 2. Yuusaku is a bad protagonist. He's not executed well at all. He's a complete failure, and he makes me want to say I like Yugioh because at least Yugioh wasn't a fucking wish fulfillment badass. And honestly, you really can't talk about Yuusaku and why he is the way he is without bringing up Yuma and Yuya, because Yuma and Yuya are easily the most polarizing protagonists. These are 2 characters, people either seem to love them or hate them, and I don't think Konami wanted that, because suddenly they decided, let's stick Yusaku's face everywhere. Let's put him on every structure deck. Let's really stick him on shit. And, well, that's a problem because it essentially means that the story is so afraid to really explore Yusaku's character and the more negative sides of his personality that he never really feels complete or developed. With Yuma and Yuya, you may not have liked them, but at least you felt like you fully understood them. You felt like you really experienced things with them, their pain, their triumphs, their happiness, their sorrow. But Yusaku is just always this intense, angry, just always trying to win, always trying to get to the next plot point. I never felt like we took any time to get to know him. And it's sad because I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do with a character like this. I think you could do a lot with someone who's been through so much pain and how they're trying to work out how they can somehow live their lives with it. I would love to watch a Yu-Gi-Oh! Dedicated to that. You could do a season or two of television just about that. You could do a season or two where it's just like Yuusaku trying to move on with his life and just the occasional duel happens. That would be really interesting, but we never get it. We never get really any emotion with him. Even in the finale, after he's finally allowed to cry and emote, we don't see what effect that has on him because the last 10 minutes is just everyone talking about him. Like, God, it's so screwed up. The only real scene where I felt like we really got any real emotion with Yuusaku, besides, like, his final scene with Ai, is weirdly the scene with him and Aoi. Just two characters sitting on a bench talking about their problems is something I never thought I'd have to demand a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show to do. And what is so obvious is the people making it were aware of this because they put the scene in the opening. They clearly knew they screwed up and were trying so desperately at the end to fix this guy. And, well, it didn't work. He's so bad. Like, he's just so uninteresting. And it sucks. But it all ultimately it all ultimately comes down to one final problem. The problem everything comes from. And that is, number one, production problems. So it has become very clear from the ending of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 to the ending of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains that Konami or NHS or Trojan or whoever the fuck you want to blame it on has wanted a much firmer control over how the show is produced. I think this was in direct response to what I just said, Yuma and Yuya being polarizing, just the two shows in general, not necessarily getting the reaction that, say, 5Ds did. And so I think they really just wanted to control everything. So what do you get? We want Yuusaku's face on more product. So therefore, he can't really explore the darker sides of his personality. You can't go as far as you went with the other two. We don't want to do that with anybody because we need more product, because character development is risky because people might react negatively, so focus more on the plot. We want more cybers, so come up with excuses for more cybers. We don't care about the characters, so if you want, go in here, fine, but we're not really going to give you the time to really sculpt him and make him properly. We're not going to give you the money to make the show look interesting. We're barely going to give you enough money to finish episodes because we needed half a dozen recap episodes. And the worst part of those recap episodes, above all else, was that you had the director on Twitter being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We're trying. Please, everybody, don't hate me. I want another job after this." I hated that. If you are in charge and head of a production, if you are the director, you are steering this ship. It is your job to make sure things go all right and make the best product possible. Now, yes, if you are having a lot of production problems and you have a studio that just won't let you do your job, it's tough. But guess what? It's the job you signed up for, and they are paying you. They're paying you a lot more money than I'm probably making. So yeah, I found that super inappropriate, especially towards the end of the show where, like, everyone was just admitting they were jumping ship. Like, everyone knew they'd be out of work for a while as Konami tries to figure the fuck out what they want to do with this show. And you know what? I hope whatever they figure out is better than this. I do not want another rushed production. I do not want a show that is just obsessed with making episode after episode so that way they can keep the formula going. Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains is part of a dying era. It is part of an era of shonen where you just need to cram out tons of episodes where it's just existing for the sake of existing. That is the problem with Black Clover, Boruto, One Piece. All of these shows just mostly do 50 episodes a year because they don't think you'll come back if they take hiatuses. Shows like My Hero Academia, Food Wars, Demon Slayer, they only need to do 12 to 25 a year because they know they've crafted a good story. They've spent time on the animation. They've spent time giving the best show they can give, And that is what you're then going to get. And I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Could, by waves, become better than those. I think you could do a lot of interesting, fascinating things with these plots and these characters and the way these stories are executed, but they need the proper execution. And yes, Konami has every right to have a strong hand on everything. It's their money. But there comes a certain point in time where you need to trust the creators to craft a good story if you want to make more money. Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, as it stands, is being much more remembered as a jumbled mess than for any of the good points we'll talk about next week. And that sucks, because the good points in this show felt like they were fought for. They felt like they were writers trying to get any bit that they could get out there. So hopefully next week we'll be able to put a bit more of a spotlight on that, because I'd rather do that than another negative video. So yeah, that will be next week. But in the comments section below, give me your thoughts on all the production problems, all the issues this show had, because there's a lot. I mostly just wanted to cover the big ones. So yeah, tell me about that below. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me next week so we can say goodbye to Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains on a high note.